Hey, welcome back to Sasquatch Off-Road. I got a short story here that I'm going to read for you guys. It's a story that I wrote a couple years ago. I've been kind of working on it here and there. I think it's time that I put it out there in the universe and see what you guys think. If you guys like it, let me know. And here we go. It was 4 o'clock in the morning when I silenced my alarm. Slowly and painfully, I rose to my feet, rubbing my lower back. I could feel the shrapnel scars from where the IED had hit my Humvee while I was deployed in Iraq with the Army. I noticed my wife's side of the bed was empty, which had been a common occurrence since the passing of our daughter, Caitlin. She had just joined the Coast Guard. She said she wanted to be like her dad, but felt like the Coast Guard was a better fit. She was out celebrating with friends when they were hit by a drunk driver who had crossed the median. She was killed instantly. Ever since the funeral, communication with my wife had been sparse, to say the least. Found my wife on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket, watching the flames from the propane fireplace. I started a pot of coffee as I gathered my hiking gear. I hiked to help with my PTSD, and it had turned into a running joke that I was out looking for Bigfoot, because I had been interested in the subject when I was younger. My wife walked into the kitchen as I poured myself a cup of coffee, so I grabbed another cup and poured her one. She noticed the gun on my hip, then looked at my pack on the chair. She asked, "Going to find the big guy?" "With any luck," I replied, which made her smile, and that made me smile too, which was the first time she'd smiled in 5 months. Hell, it seemed it had been that long for me as well. I finished my coffee and picked up my gear, and when I reached the door, I heard her say, "Please drop me a pin of where you'll be." The sun was just starting to come up when I parked my truck. I checked my pistol and sent my location to my wife before I walked away from the vehicle. I headed west toward a peak I used to visit. As soon as I left my truck, I got an uneasy feeling like the ones I had overseas, like something wasn't right or like I was being watched. But I was stateside, so I pushed through, chalking up to not being in the area for a while. The feeling went away about a mile from where I'd parked. Memories of my daughter rushed through my head. She used to hike this area with me when she was young. It was just the two of us spending time together. Sometimes in silence, just enjoying nature. It was roughly an 8 mile hike round trip, and when I reached my spot high on that peak, I was feeling every bit of it. Slid my pack off and pulled out my water bottle and bologna sandwich before sitting down beneath an aspen tree and taking in the scenery. It was always breathtaking in early fall, the trees on the verge of changing colors, the animals not yet spooked by hunters. That was when I heard the report of a rifle, a very large caliber rifle. It was a good distance away, but still got my adrenaline going. Another shot rang out. What followed next was a terrifying roar of a massive creature, a roar I've never heard before. It brought me straight to my feet, scanning the wilderness below me. Thought it'd be a good idea to wait a little longer before heading back down to my truck. Checked my pistol again before heading out, this time a little slower and more cautious. Watching my surroundings for anything out of the norm and glancing behind me every so often. I wasn't on a marked trail, just a route I had made myself. Most of it wound through thick pines and aspens with wide open fields in between. I came to a clearing and decided to take a small break. Staying concealed in the trees, I looked at my watch. 12:30. I took a swig of water and pulled out a granola bar from my cargo pocket. I was about to step into the clearing when my intuition told me to stay in the trees and skirt the edge. I headed left, staying in the cover of the pines, and without even noticing, muscle memory took over and I was moving slowly and tactfully through the trees. Then, like a wave, an uneasy feeling rushed over me, like I was being watched. Instinctively, I drew my pistol and dropped to a knee behind a tree. Scanning the tree line, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. After about 20 seconds, I stood up and continued, moving even slower and scanning the area, wishing I had my rifle. After passing the clearing, it seemed like the sound of the forest shut off. Even the bugs went quiet. Then I heard a voice, not in the forest, but in my head, and it wasn't my voice. "I'm over here. Help me." Panicked, I dropped behind a bush. I scanned my surroundings, and no more than 10 feet away lay a giant creature. Its arm was outstretched toward me like it was reaching for me. I was startled at first, but I didn't feel threatened. Its breathing was labored, I stood and walked closer to the creature, knowing right away it was a Bigfoot. When I got within 5 feet, I saw it was a male, and he had a gunshot wound to his leg about 6 inches above the knee. Breathing profusely, I holstered my 1911, dropped my pack, and pulled out my tourniquet. The moment I unraveled it, I knew it wasn't going to work on a thigh that massive. Panicking for a second or two, I remembered the ratchet strap I had carried for my hammock. Removing it, I wrapped it around the Bigfoot's thigh, 2 inches above the wound. Using a sturdy stick, I tightened the strap until the bleeding stopped. I glanced at the Bigfoot's face to gauge his pain. He was stoic. I couldn't help but notice how human his features were. That's when I noticed the hole in his chest. It was hard to see with all the hair, and it was barely bleeding. Then it clicked. His labored breathing, the wound, it was a second chest wound. I dumped my pack onto the ground, searching for my MRE. Finding it, I cut the bag open and dumped the contents, and cut the bag into 2 pieces. I taped one piece over the wound, leaving the bottom edge open for drainage. Checked his face again. His breathing had improved slightly, his eyes watching me intensely with curiosity and kindness. I prepped the second piece of MRE packaging with tape on all 4 sides and lightly stuck it in my shirt for later. Then I got behind the massive creature and with his help got into a semi-seated position leaning to his right. His breathing grew more labored. His back had significantly more hair than his chest, and I worried the bandage wouldn't seal, so I began trimming the hair around the exit wound with my trauma shears. Talking to Sasquatch, who I started calling Sam, about my daughter who I hadn't talked about since her passing. After trimming enough hair, I wiped away as much blood, sweat, and hair as I could before applying the MRE packaging over the exit wound. Pressing the tape down for 30 seconds, I heard Sam's breathing improve slightly and his body relaxed. As gently as I could, I laid him back against a tree. He was every bit of 600 pounds. I knelt at his right side, rechecking the tourniquet and chest seal. Then I thought, what now? Call a veterinarian? A doctor? Who would believe me? I sat back on my heels and figured I'd keep watch over him for a while. He moved slightly, and when I looked up, he wore a bewildered expression, and as he stared past the clump of trees we were in, confusion shifted to anger, his face contorting into a scowl. In my head, I heard Sam say one word, Ivan. I followed his gaze, but all I saw were bushes, until one began to move towards us. I asked, who's Ivan? His family has been hunting us for generations. He followed us from Siberia over the solid water, Sam replied. As the bush got closer, I reached for my pistol. Ivan lifted his own pistol and in a deep Russian accent said, hands. While pulling off the mask portion of his ghillie suit, I slowly raised my hands. He motioned with his gun for me to move away from Sam. But I did the opposite, placing my body between them so Ivan couldn't get a clear shot. Ivan just smiled and said, if that's your choice. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. He pulled the hammer back on his revolver, which, judging by the bore diameter, I guessed was a Smith & Wesson 500 or something similar. That's when I felt Sam's massive hand on my shoulder, gently moving me aside. I tried to resist, but even injured, I stood no chance. It's okay, he told me. My time has come. Your wife still needs you. I looked back at him. His face had softened, his eyes watery, a single tear rolled down his cheek, and an overwhelming sense of peace washed over me. Then there was ringing. Sam's hand fell away from my shoulder as blood started to seep from a hole just above my bandage. His eyes went blank. I knew he was gone. Looking back at Ivan, smoke rising from the barrel of his gun, his smile grew. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard a muffled, I did it. I finally did it. But his smile vanished when the woods around us erupted with angry, aggressive roars. Ivan shouted, they were supposed to be gone. Dropping everything, he ran to the opposite direction. He made it about 20 feet before a brown blur snatched him up and disappeared into the trees. His screams stopped abruptly. My hearing was slowly returning when I felt a presence behind me. I turned to see a female Sasquatch walking up. She wasn't as big as Sam, but still huge. Saw tears pouring down her cheeks. She walked right past me like I wasn't even there. Kneeling beside Sam, she pulled his head into her chest and rocked gently while crying. More and more Bigfoots appeared. The female holding Sam gently laid him down, then turned to acknowledge me. Standing to her full height, she offered me her hand. Helping me to my feet, I felt her say thank you, then walked past me into the trees. Several Sasquatch gathered around Sam, removed the bandages from his chest and the tourniquet from his leg, and with two on each side, lifted him effortlessly onto their shoulders. They carried him away, leaving me alone. I stood there for 5 minutes, just in awe of what had happened. I slapped myself and said aloud, "Yeah, no, I'm awake." I gathered my things, making sure I left no garbage behind. I hoisted my pack and started toward my truck. That's when I realized the woods were still silent. No birds, no insects, nothing. Coming down the trail, I could finally see glimpses of my truck parked on the dirt road. Heard what sounded like another vehicle approaching. I reached my truck as a foreigner came into view. It was my wife's. She parked behind me, jumped out, and ran into my arms. I could tell she'd been crying. Her eyes were puffy, and her makeup had been smeared. She didn't hold the embrace long before pushing me away and yelling, "Were you sprayed by a skunk? What's that smell?" "No, what are you doing here?" I asked. I had a horrible feeling something bad had happened, so I called Dave. He used his contacts at Search and Rescue to ping your phone. I said it hadn't moved in hours, so I got scared, she replied. Then she gasped, covering her mouth as she looked behind me. I grabbed my gun and spun around to see several Sasquatch walking out of the woods towards us. They walked to the hood of my truck and began laying flowers, arrowheads, dried pieces of meat, and strips of leather across it. The female who had held Sam, likely his mate, approached my wife and me and handing us an old rag doll with blonde pigtails, big blue eyes, and a red polka dot dress. My wife gasped, "Oh my God, isn't that Caitlin's doll?" Our daughter had lost it out here on one of our hikes when she was about 5. She had always told us she gave it to the hairy lady, and we never knew what she meant until now. My wife nudged me in the back. "You found him," she said excitedly. "More like you found me," I replied. "I'll fill you in later." The female Sasquatch turned and walked back into the trees, never to be seen again. Well, guys, that's my short story titled Sam. Really appreciate you guys listening. If you guys haven't liked or shared yet or subscribed, I really appreciate that. Thanks for listening.